Greetings, comic fans, and welcome to another episode of Uncle Jay's Comic Adventure. I am super excited to be with you today because I have a batch of books that's been gone for more than 450 days, and it's just so great to see them back. I can't wait to see them in the slabs, and I can't wait to share them with you. Let's take a look at them. We'll start out with one of my all-time favorites, one of my all-time favorite covers. Amazing Spider-Man number 50, the first appearance of the Kingpin. My only regret, I wish the cover looked a little better on this copy. It's missing a small portion of the cover, so that brings it down to a 1.5. Still pretty nice, though. Still pretty nice. I'm still glad to have this one. I have another copy. I think the other one is it's either a 3.5 or a 2.5, but it's great to have this one. And again, this is off-white to white pages from 1967. The first appearance of the Kingpin. Classic, truly classic cover by John Romita, one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man artists. Of course, we're talking about John Romita Sr. John Romita Jr. also had some nice Spider-Man images at times. Amazing Spider-Man number 121, which super nice book as well, a classic. Also John Romita. This is the classic story, The Death of Gwen Stacy. The nice yellow cover tells you it's a turning point, and they warn you that someone's going to die. You don't quite know when you look at the cover who it is, but they show you a bunch of people to pick from. Obviously, somebody important was going to pass in this book, and it turned out to be true. But, as most of you know, there's also an old saying in comic books, no one ever really stays dead. At least not many people. Uncle Ben, Bruce Wayne's parents, but Gwen Stacy was gone for so long. Now she's back, obviously. Honestly, when I was growing up, I didn't really know much about Gwen Stacy. I remember they would talk about her in the books from time to time, but I started collecting in the 80s and the 90s, and so they would talk about her death, and Peter Parker would be sad about it, but I remember how great I thought it was when I finally got a chance to read the actual death of Gwen Stacy and just find out what the story was really all about. But, of course, she's back in a big way with the Spider-Gwen and all that, and I enjoy the character. Amazing Spider-Man number 122 in a 5.0. This one goes great with 121. This is off-white to white pages, 1973. Really a great presenting book. I like the cover on this one a lot better than 121. That cover's good. This cover, if you ask me, is amazing. Super nice. It's actually one of my favorite Spidey covers as well. I like the colors. I like the action shot. And this one I like even better. This one tickles me to death because this is the same book in an 8.0 with white pages. Just a super classy copy. Really, really clean. If it weren't for the fact that the staple is a little bent on the bottom corner right there, I think you can probably see that. I think this book could even go higher, but I would imagine with that particular defect, 8.0 is about as far as that book will go. But that doesn't matter. It presents really, really well. Okay, here's a classic book right here. Arguably, the first appearance of Wolverine. We're talking about Incredible Hulk number 180. It was a cameo. It was on the last page, but he was in here. I do like 181 better, but I'm tickled to have this. I actually have a couple copies of the Hulk 180. One is a CBCS, and of course here's a CGC copy as well. Presents well. This one's missing the Marvel value stamp. That's why it's a 1.8. You might ask, well, why didn't it have a green label since it was missing the Marvel value stamp? I've seen them go both ways. If it has a green label, they're usually going to grade it higher. And then sometimes they just take that off the regular grade and say, okay, this is a blue label, but fairly low as a blue label as well. Okay, Amazing Spider-Man number 121. Another copy of the Death of Gwen Stacy. This one looks a little sharper. It's a 3.0. Again, from 1973. 3.0, Death of Gwen Stacy. And it does have off-white to white pages. Here's another Spidey classic. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 31. I actually have this already, but I'm glad to have another copy. This is the first appearance of Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. And truthfully, I think this book is still underestimated. It's still pretty cheap if you ask me for what the book is. That's not going to stay for long. It's bound to take off, especially when, and I don't say if, when Gwen Stacy shows up in the MCU. That's bound to happen. 1.8 with cream to off-white pages. Not a bad displaying book, though. Looks pretty good. The back has some significant staining, and I think that's the issue. It looks like somebody set a coffee cup on here or something. You can see the circles really faint on the back where something's kind of circular has set on here and stained it. I imagine somebody set a coffee cup or a Coke can or something like that on that at some point. Okay. Great book right here. I've never owned this book before. Super exciting. I enjoyed watching the old Star Trek shows when I was a kid. This book right here, I mean, it's a mega key. It has pretty much the first appearance of everybody in Star Trek because it's the first Star Trek book. 1967 by Gold Key. This one has off-white to white pages. It's a 2.5. Really displays great. And one of the really awesome things about this book, if you turn it around, it still displays great because you have nice artwork on the back. They didn't sell the ads at that point, and that's great. I know Marvel's done that at other times. The Wolverine covers sometimes had artwork on the back, and that was just an extra nice treat. Amazing Spider-Man number 122. I know I sent several copies of this one in. This one's probably the lowest grade of this batch. It's got some, looks like a little bit of chew at the bottom corner where something's been chewing on it. Probably a mouse at some point years ago. And other than that, it's still not that clean. You got a little staining on the top. It actually, from a distance, presents pretty well, though, for a 1.5. Wouldn't mind this copy at all. Again, I'd rather have the 8.0, but still a nice copy to have. Suits me just fine. Another copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 31 in a 1.5. And I think this one actually presents better than the 1.8 we just looked at. But I believe, I'm just guessing, I need to look at the notes. Maybe not. It looks like the staple is in here. But we do have some significant spine wear, and I think that's what's probably bringing it down. I don't know if you can see that. But again, a nice presenting copy. The colors are pretty good. Presents really, really well. A 1.5. First appearance of Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. Now that's a mega key. And just a few more. This book, it's kind of interesting. I probably honestly would not have sent this book in if I knew it was going to come back a 5.5. It's nice in a 5.5, but I thought it was cleaner than that. It's not a particularly valuable book, but I have a Luke Cage Hero for Hire number 1 in a 5.0, and I thought, boy, this would go great with that book. I found a really, really nice, clean copy of number 2. I expected it to be much higher. I think probably it's the tanning, the color change, because other than that, the corners, everything are super sharp on this book. I mean, really sharp corners, and you don't see sharp corners like that usually. It doesn't even look like there's hardly any spine ticks in a 5.5, so it must be the tanning that's bringing this down. This is 5.5 in Hero for Hire number 2. And it still looks good. It will display great with the 5.0 number 1. But, like I say, I probably wouldn't have sent it in to get a 5.5. I was hoping probably for something a little bit more like the 122, maybe an 8. It must be the tanning. And a couple more books. This is a pretty good sized batch. I have another copy of this in a 2.5, but it's a good book. From 1966, the first appearance of the Rhino, Amazing Spider-Man number 41. A lot of spine wear, and I think that's probably where the bulk of the 1.5 comes from. Also, there's some significant spine roll. I sent these in to be pressed and cleaned, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, CGC contacted me and told me that there was a few of these that they just thought were too brittle. And this is probably one of them. It does look like it could be kind of brittle. When you see the spine kind of flaking like that, watch out, because sometimes they will. You start doing a lot with them, they might start flaking off. And I'm sure that's probably what they were thinking. And of course, last but not least, another copy of The Death of Gwen Stacy. This one's a 3.0 in white pages. it's got a subscription crease pretty much all the way down the cover. I think that's what's bringing it down, but it really displays well. It's got a nice color to it. Other than the subscription crease, I would say this book might have been a 4-ish, maybe 4.5 to 5 even, but the subscription crease kind of brings it down. Still a great book to have. I'll look forward to displaying this with my 8.0 122. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. I sure appreciate you watching. I had a great time. I hope you did. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And tune in for the next video.